Let me pause. Right, well, I did have a quick break. I went back to the beginning and I just got the first part of the first sentence of part A. And I realised, yes, that's exactly it. So what I have achieved, as I see it in my life, is that I've come to both a desire to trust in God and experienced the amazing comfort of doing so. So there's no way I'm going to put that behind me. It is my impression, you see, because of the stark contrast in happiness and fulfillment. In other words, my choice of trusting in God, as I see it as that, you see, my choice in doing so has been an incredible blessing to me. Through the difficulties of life. Now, I'm taking it that at least many and most lives seem to have this problem of dealing with loss. Might be friendship loss, lack of failures in the things that happen in life, you know, career or, I don't know, house burning down or wartime or famine or whatever it is that man has coped with. And the incredible blessing it is if you have this facility to hand that is entered into a state of trusting in God in the circumstances. And it seems to be a choice. Now, it may be a choice that flees from you in truly difficult circumstances, the desperate. I mean, the nearest to desperate I've had is the fear of severe back trouble that would make me an invalid. I don't mean I had it that bad, but it was certainly on the cards, as I felt. And over a long period of time. And loss of wives, of course, loss of relationships that I value. And I've found that trusting in God existing and caring and being a lovely God, and being my dad, in fact, you know, in the Jesus story sense, has been everything to coping with such situations and astonishingly finding happiness, joy and fulfillment and meaning. Now, I'm not giving that up lightly. You might, as a theoretician, what we think of as a psychiatrist or psychologist, think, oh, this is just a sop, a crutch. But crutches are very useful, you see. I mean, you don't want them to break, that's true. You want them to be a good crutch. I'm not dismissing the trust in God as being simply a facility of helping in dire straits and being a blessing. On the contrary, I'm saying I've found such trust and belief to be such a blessing. And when I experience a time of not having it, which is in dreams, occasionally, as you know, I have such dreams, the absence of this trust is for me to experience once again the absence of it, which is not good. But of course, because the thought of God's comfort and presence and help is absent in the dream, I'm not seeing the circumstances unreasonable. You know, it's not making me think this must be a dream, which is what I need to think. I should choose to think of God again because I know that works. In the dream, I don't know that works. So I'm experiencing being secular again as a secular person. And in a sense, it's not that bad because I don't have the contrast with the joy and the life and the fullness of life that I have when I trust God in the waking world. So it's a strange thing. I mean, it has still the disadvantage of not having God in it. But it doesn't feel as bad as it would, in a sense, if I knew I had God. But of course, if I knew I had God, I'd know I could choose to trust again anyway. And the dream, I think, would evaporate. Or shift into a good outcome of where I simply choose to trust God and thank him in the circumstance. So in this little dream I've just had since 5 o'clock, which probably only lasted a few seconds, a few minutes. It seemed just a few minutes. Even in the dream, I mean, it didn't have an ongoing reality of past and future and other experiences and why am I dreaming this? It didn't have that depth to it. It was just a brief video, if you like, a brief cartoon of a reality that I'm now not used to, thank goodness. But I didn't know. In a sense, I knew it was bad when I was in it as a secular person, but I didn't know the incredible gain of trusting in God, and it didn't occur to me, of course. I just thought such thing was nonsense and, well, literally, yes, a crutch, and what happens when you're faced with reality? How are you going to cope? And I'm a man of the world. I can face reality and have to and do. And that's the way life is. And yes, I'm concerned about others coping with this, and I'm a humanist accordingly, and was. And very concerned, and my concern extended to animals and caring for people and so forth. This is, in my early 20s and previously to that. Yes, let me pause again. So for me, it's the point of rationality, or I rationalize it by saying, look, I've found this way of living to both want God and trusting in him, behaving as if he definitely exists, to be a tremendous blessing. And I wouldn't give it up for the world. Do you see? And that's it in a nutshell. And so I look at suffering mankind, generally that seems to drop into suffering. And I think if only they had this experience of trusting their God, the one that personifies what they value, trusting that he does exist, as Dad, according to the Jesus story, a loving Dad who cares for them and indeed all that he's made. And how this choice is so valuable, such a blessing, which the secular don't know and cannot know, because they've been presented with a God that's not at all lovely, not very lovable, not their God, a frightening, judgmental, fierce God, a God that rejects, judges. They want nothing to do with that, so that's not a solution. It doesn't occur to them that, well, what about trusting in a God that is all that you value, all that you treasure, a wonderful friend to you? Why not try thinking in those terms and see how it affects your well-being? You see, in that sense, it's not a mental illness. I mean, it's on the contrary, it's rationality. How do you know if you haven't tasted this stuff? Or, I don't like fruit. Right, I think you would like fruit, love. I mean, it happens to be extremely good for you and nourishing, and really it's more reliable and pleasanter to eat than the rubbish you eat, you know. The rubbish you eat makes you dull and heavy and doesn't bring health and vitality. Fruit does. And that's what you need. So, you know, you would like to instill in the child a desire for healthy fruit rather than, if you like, fast food, which they're hooked on. You know, they want, I don't know, pizza and chips and grease and grain and sauces and so on, you know, which are not going to bring a great deal of health and vitality and well-being. And if they were only used to eating fruit, like my boys were, but my daughter isn't. And I can't really change that. She has a diet with her mum accordingly. And her mum's turned, I think, to fast food, being in a different culture to her Indian culture. And she drops into the Indian food, which is not terribly healthy, just rice and spice. And well, it's not as bad as Western fast food, but it's not good. It would be a lot better if the rice were wholemeal brown rice and the vegetables were lightly cooked and the spice was minimized. And but you know, that's not her way, and she's been coping with, well, the divorce that she's brought about. Excuse me, that is my view, of course. That might not be her view. I don't know. Well, I don't know. And that is the point. We are in a world of uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, we have to choose to believe in certain things. And, sorry, not in certain things. We have to believe. And we put together that perhaps this is a secular world with no God, and isn't it awful? And how can I manage as best I can? And that's an incredibly impoverished state of being compared to being in a state where you trust in a loving heavenly God. In the storm, not just in the peace. And you weather the storm better because of it. And that gives you tremendous encouragement and training to weather worse storms just as well. Do you see my drift? So I see it as a tragedy that there are so many people coping with secular life, not realizing the incredible blessing of loving their own God, the one that personifies what they value, and trusting that he, she, or it, no, he or she, you know, divine mother or heavenly father or dearest friend even, but supernatural, wonderful, loving, powerful, all-powerful friend, faithful and true. There's not many people that wouldn't value such, is there? You would have thought. And yet in our secular way, we don't turn to it, we just say, oh, well, that's make-believe, that's not going to do any good. Because they haven't tasted of such. What they have tasted of is, as I say, a God that was not their own, that was not the personification of what they value, and that might be fast food and fun and, I don't know, drugs and sex. I mean, and if they trusted in that with all their heart, as they indulged in such, they would quickly find the invalidity of such trust and choose to trust in what we might say is much finer, that which is good and wholesome, so to speak, loving and kind, faithful and true. In other words, a God that personifies what they truly value at heart. They long for good friends. They long for prosperity. They long for loving kindness and joy and hope and peace and loveliness. They label it as, it's something to do with affluence and power. It's not. It's to do with what you trust and think. And if you trust and think that money and power is going to bring you the happiness and joy and the peace and the fullness of life that you value, well, you will quickly find that that is not the case. You can have all the money and power in the world and be extremely frightened and unhappy. As I think someone like Hitler or Stalin exemplifies, the world wants to kill you, all of it, and quite reasonably because of the way you've seized money and power, perhaps, It's not the way to go. And what we have done in our societies, down the years it seems, down this millennia, is valued the wrong things, and that's why we're here, perhaps, that we learn the error of our ways in a transitory situation where at least our mistakes vanish in time. And we vanish. It was just a dream that was constantly there for a while, and we called reality, and we learned from it, and my goodness, I don't want that again. And now and again I get the dream, and I think, oh my goodness, why didn't I think of God in that dream? If only I had. Well, when you've got someone going on and on about it like Marshall, you do have the option of thinking of it. It's almost forced on you. Not quite, of course, because you don't have to listen to the recordings, do you? I mean, you can live your secular life if that's your call. But I wish to God that it was not your calling, that you hear me, and that I bring rescue into your dilemma. There is no way I want you to be lonely or unhappy, wretched or concerned. As Jesus says, I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And this is what I value. I know what I value. Perhaps you do too. You just haven't somehow taken hold of it. And I don't think you realize that your problem is that you are choosing to trust the reverse. You're choosing to believe in the reality of secular life.
I'm going to make a break here because I think 18 minutes is quite long enough. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.